think of it as Dragon's Den. Ask us any question. There we go.
Man in the red jumper.
So, in the past, we found out that the Syrian army was going to... in the past, we found out the Syrian army was going to attack us. It was in a previous role, not in the role I'm in now. We went to the teams to tell them in advance this was happening, and then we saw the network spike, and it was all the tech guys trying to find about the Syrian army online. How would you breach that with different people again? How would you tell your technology people that there's a potential attack and that we need to prepare for it, but without getting them to warn the Syrian army that it's going to happen?
So maybe I can answer this one as an ex-CIO, CISO in hostile complex environments, if you guys are okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one of the things that we did is we made it the usual norm. So it's not waiting for an attack and then telling people. It's actually preparing, like the fire brigade do. You don't see the fire brigade arrive and say, there's a fire, run round. It's practice. So we had the eye candy on the wall, which had all of the red lights when things went red. And my CEO often came over to me and said, is there a problem? Because everyone's serene like swans, very calm and collected. And I said, yes, we had those sorts of individuals attacking us on a daily basis because of the places that we operated. So I think it's preparing for it, but actually make it the norm rather than the exception. So they know what to do. But actually, it's not just the technology people. It's also the other people in the organization, because it's dealing with that breach during the time. I talk to companies and I say to them, have you got a disaster recovery plan? And they say yes. And they say, have you got a cyber breach plan? Yes, and they bring out the same disaster recovery plan. They're very, very different. One is about how do you deal with the incident during the event and how can you survive your business. So I'd say make it the norm, practice, practice, practice. Now, I did a disaster recovery at will any day of the week. I didn't have lots of technology in place. I used virtualized technologies to do it, but I didn't tell the business. We just did it.
Okay. Would it be fair to say as well that this plan needs to involve every single department? It needs to involve PR, it needs to involve C-level, it needs to involve technical. Everyone in the company needs to be on board.
But don't give it to the senior person to invoke. I actually gave the invocation of a disaster recovery or a breach response to someone very, very junior, because typically the senior people who you'd expect to give it to are busy doing other stuff. So what we do is for example, we said we had a disaster where we had the Syrian army attack one of my sites. I'm trying not to give away where it was, the site. And what we actually did is we said, okay, everybody has to physically move to the new site. And what we did is we took all of the senior management out. They said the scenario one is you've lost all your senior management, there was a bomb en route, you've lost everybody. How do you deal with that? We didn't tell any of the junior people what to do, but they instinctively knew because they'd practiced it over and over again. Someone then took the authority, said, right, I'll be team leader, and they continued. And I think it's HR, it's PR. The biggest challenge, if you think of some of the breaches over the last 12 to 18 months, probably longer than that, large telecoms provider. Yeah? Their challenge was not that they'd had the breach, it was how they dealt with the aftermath and how they communicated it to the external world. Wouldn't it be much better if they'd been able to go to the press and say, we've had a very large breach, we know what data was stolen, we know the extent of how long we've been in our organisation, and actually it's all encrypted, so we're not that worried about it. They wouldn't have lost 40% of their revenue overnight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question?
Sorry.
Right at the back. The lady at the back. Hang on, there's a speaker there.
No.
In your presentation earlier, you mentioned about monitoring the insider threat. You appear to suggest that HR departments should be monitoring the social media activity of their employees. And I wondered how you would describe that with compliance with data protection regulation, respecting privacy of their employees. What condition for processing you would use to justify such monitoring?
Yeah, very good question. So just to be clear, part of the sentiment analysis is something you should probably think about as part of your insider threat program. So there should be clear policies around social media usage, for example, and as part of the training. So the previous presentation was fantastic about awareness and training across the organisation. And as long as you are enabling people to understand what the frameworks are and ensuring that you have some form of solution in place from a policy, training, awareness perspective, I think organisations are perfectly justified in terms of some form of monitoring. Clearly, there can be a bit of grey line, a bit of a line when it comes to high personal monitoring. I think that the jury is out in regards to automated systems. There are sentiment analysis systems that do really well when it comes to things like festivals, for example. Everyone's going to this show and raving about it. They're still in their very early days. But elements of that will be incredibly tricky to put in place because you have potential profiling implications as well around what people are doing online, what they're talking about, how they're interacting. But at the end of the day, you monitor content layer of emails, you analyze the content of network packets, you're doing a lot more highly intrusive stuff than just social media monitoring as well. And as long as it's within the framework of policy, reason for it, training, it shouldn't be too much of an issue.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry, can I add to that?
you may.
Thank you. So in terms of, from an HR perspective, if you're looking at GDPR and all the other regulations I mentioned today, social media monitoring and any other online activity monitoring for a particular organization actually is one of those cases when you don't need consent as a legal basis. Because as an employer, you are actually what can be described as a position of power and you have legitimate business interest in doing it. And in financial services, for example, there are regulations such as MiFID, which actually mandate social media monitoring. So it is not in conflict with the regulation.
Thank you.
I don't think social media data is any different than any other data in your organisation.
Exactly.
It's a piece of data.
Okay, question? There isn't a microphone, it's died. Can you stand up and talk loudly, please?
There's been a lot of mention today about the government's involved in cyber security. They set up the National Cyber Security Centre, but nobody I've heard has mentioned anything about the cyber security information sharing partnership they set up. Is that actually of any value?
You mean the CISP?
Sorry?
The CIS, the CISP. Having been in financial services for most of my life, I think the CISP is actually very valuable for those organizations that join, but you will tend to see that those that are part of the CISP membership are larger organizations on the main. So it is extremely valuable to be a member of that, but more is needed in terms of cooperation and awareness, especially in the SME space, where you will find they are not members of CISP, and therefore they need more things such as, for example, IASME or the support of the Federation of Small Businesses and so on and so forth.
So I answered this question in my previous life. So this is not that of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. So there's the strap line. So as an ex-CIO and CISO, I was a member of CISP. Very, very useful. It was one of the tools. It wasn't the only tool for knowledge sharing, but there was a number of attacks that we had in a particular organization that I worked at that I wouldn't have known the mode of operation, the type of attack, unless I'd actually shared that knowledge with some of my CISO colleagues in other businesses. And actually the valuable thing for me was not just sharing with my own industry. So if you talk about financial services, it's very good at sharing. If you think of White Shark and some of the things have gone, sometimes it's useful to know what retail are doing, and sometimes, or other industries, because you can learn from that. So yes, but it's not the only. It's one of the tools the CISO can pull upon.
Okay, any more questions? We're coming to the end of the conference.
Oh, come on, this is awkward. How long have we got left? How long have we got left?
2 minutes, Carl.
2 minutes. Right, you've got 2 minutes to grill me. Go. Seriously, grill me. What's the most awkward question you can think of? The most difficult question?
I'll ask a question.
Go for it.
Does a hacker who's a black hacker become a white hacker? Because you see lots of people moving from being bad to become good. Can you really become a good hacker? Because the whole point of it.
Question.
That's why I asked the question.
That's a good question.
Can I start it, Carl?
You can, go.
So I believe yes.
Okay.
And in fact, today I'm representing Cognosec, and as part of advisory, people that we have is an ex-member of LOSEC. So the skills are there, and I firmly believe that there are individuals that are prepared to reform, and when they do, they have invaluable skills.
Yeah.
I'm going to extend on that. For me, when we approach and when we talk to ex-hackers, we're not actually approaching them for the talent. Because typically they come out of what they've been doing with borderline no corporate skills whatsoever.
Yep.
It's pretty low. You know, take me as an example. I came out of jail with, I thought I was the best in the world. I thought I was the shit, and I was not. I was terrible. And it took me 10 years to get to the point where I could actually say, no, you know what, I'm all right. I'm good at what I do. I'm good at what I do. What we focus on more is actually the trust aspect. Okay. For us, security clearance, okay, it may mean something in some places, but when you have to be careful who you give jobs to anyway. It can be someone with security clearance, it could be someone without, it could be an ex-hacker, it could be someone you've just hired as an intern. You would never give that information to someone just purely based on those facts. You would judge it on a case-by-case basis. And really, if you're managing that sort of risk, if you're managing who should we trust, it should always be, does that person need to know that information? Can you manage that risk? So that's my person. I know it goes off on a tangent a little bit.
That's why I asked the question, because
Yeah,
it is a provoking one,
fantastic
because if you
question.
think of someone like Kevin Mitnick, for example, who is the world's renowned hacker, he's become good, and obviously he's done a lot of value because of the skill set, but does he really, he enjoyed hacking McDonald's because of the fun?
Yeah.
So do you lose that fun?
Yeah, and I think it's on to us as a society to figure out how to sort of use the term rehabilitate these people, because it's very lucrative, it's a lot of fun, you don't have to work for a stupid boss and all that kind of good stuff, and it's a really tough challenge for us to have to face up to, especially some really attractive organisations you could go off and join and have a great time causing chaos.
So this is where the user behaviour analytics comes in, because you can monitor that individual in a controlled manner, potentially.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 2:45, conference finishing time. Sorry?
Go on.
I'd love to, I've
Oh,
known
go
you
on.
from last
Well,
year, so I'd
last
love to hear
question.
it.
Go on.
Hang on, there's a mic.
I just wanted to, I didn't want to end on a sour note, but is this working, yeah?
Yeah.
Stephen Hawking said technology may destroy us, and I've got two minds about that. What does the panel think?
Okay.
We might be close. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Let's see when the serious stuff kicks in.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of the internet of everything, and when we're building on shaky foundations.
Data leaks will mean nothing when we start seeing critical national infrastructure being seriously impacted. Then people will wake up.
I think we're already in that space.
We're already there for sure.
The technology, we've sort of circled in similar backgrounds in the past, and technology is already there, and I would say it's not the when, so it's not the if, it's the when. And we're starting to see the bad guys moving from bombs, guns and trucks, which was my old environment, to online. It's invisible, it's faster. It's very difficult. Attribution is the key thing. As a hacker, it's great to have attribution difficulties because you can avert where you're coming from and what you're doing. So you're absolutely right. I think we're there.
Yeah.
Super.
Very sour note, but we're here to speak the truth. So it's all good.
I'd like just to end on maybe an optimistic note, which is technology is just a tool, right? You can use a hammer to build a house or to kill someone, and we've got to figure that out.